Notre Dame had its 12th practice of fall camp, and the players were in full pads and had a scrimmage today. Blueandgold.com was on site and has video and takeaways that we'll provide right here. Before we dive into it, make sure you hit the thumbs up if you like what you see in this video, subscribe to our channel for more content, and make sure you go to blueandgold.com for all coverage of fall camp and Notre Dame football recruiting. We'll bring in Tyler Horka, blueandgold.com beat writer, who is outside Notre Dame Stadium where the Fighting Irish held a scrimmage today. Media got to shoot video of the first 45 minutes of practice. The rest of the scrimmage, not allowed to shoot, so unfortunately don't have a ton of scrimmage footage. But let's talk about who stood out offensively. First of all, who were you impressed with, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying it all off season, but here we go again. We're talking about those Notre Dame wide receivers. Braden Lenzy caught a deep route down the right sideline. Before the scrimmage actually started, they ran 11 on 11 before they got into individual drills, and then they got back to an 11 on 11 scrimmage later. Braden Lenzy made an awesome catch. Tight end sophomore Kevin Bauman was really phenomenal today. Everyone talks about Michael Mayer, rightfully so, but Kevin Bauman runs awesome routes. He's a little more nimble, I'd say, as a tight end, so that kind of allows him to run those routes. I noticed that he had great hands, though. He was making awesome touchdown grabs. In 7-on-7, he caught a couple touchdown passes from Drew Pine on back-to-back plays, actually, so that was pretty impressive, working on two different defenders as well. So I'd say those two guys really stood out. Lenzy, he's been doing it all camp, but Kevin Bauman was kind of the surprise guy for us today.
Defensive standouts. Who looked good on the other side of the ball, Tyler?
I was really impressed by a couple linebackers who like to play on the edge, in Jordan Botelho and Isaiah Pryor. I know everyone is kind of talking about that rover position who can kind of make up for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's absence. Those guys were awesome flying to the edge, particularly in the scrimmage. I thought Isaiah Pryor made some really good plays, just getting out to the boundary and tackling runners in the backfield, particularly running backs. It didn't matter if it was Kyron Williams, Chris Tyree, or anyone who was carrying the ball. I thought there was a great closer on the edge there from Isaiah Pryor. Jordan Botelho, he can kind of lay a little bit of a punch. And I thought Houston Griffith also laid some punch today. Houston Griffith and Michael Mayer came across the middle and collided into each other. You'd think that Mayer would get the better of that collision, but it was actually Houston Griffith. Obviously, Mayer was probably looking over his shoulder. You know, the ball might have been coming his way. It ended up not coming his way, but Griffith was ready for the contact and knocked Mayer on his butt. So that was pretty impressive. And Brian Kelly in the press conference afterwards said that Houston Griffith's a guy that if there's someone in that secondary that they're looking to make tackles, once the ball kind of gets to that level of the defense, Houston Griffith's been a guy that can do that. It really looked like it on that play too.
Of course, we're not going to have a video and not talk about the quarterbacks. Who got reps in the scrimmage? First team, second team. How did those guys look?
So the last time, it was a week ago on Thursday that we got to do this same thing where we watched the entire practice. That was the day before they told Jack Cohn that he was going to be the starter. 2 days before it actually came out to the media that he would be the starter. That was the day it kind of looked like competition between Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner for who was going to be number 2. Today, you could tell who QB1 is, and they gave him most of the reps. Jack Cohn was out there rolling with the ones in the 11 on 11 before individual drills. Jack Cohn was the one that ran most of those drives. Once it got to the actual scrimmage, Jack Cohn was the guy running with 1s and 2s in the scrimmage as well. So Jack Cohn, and you would expect that to happen, right? We're 2.5 weeks before the opener at Florida State. You're going to want to funnel most of your quarterback reps to the guy who's going to take the field. It was Jack Cohn. Interestingly, I thought Tyler Buckner came in on 7-on-7 and got most of the reps at 2. So Jack Cohn got all of his reps with the 1s, and then the next guy to come in on 7-on-7 was actually Tyler Buckner, not Drew Pine. It still looks like Drew Pine is that number 2 quarterback, but like we talked about last week, maybe Tyler Buckner, there's a competition there for number 2.
And how did Pine and Buckner perform today? And even Cohn?
I thought Pine was a little erratic, to be honest with you. He missed high, he missed low. Once it got down into goal line situations, which it looked like they were running from the 7 or 8 yard line, and they just did play after play, 7-on-7 from there. He's the guy that threw those touchdown passes to Bowman. He looked good. He threw a couple other touchdown passes to Lorenzo Styles, another guy that looked really good for the wide receiver core today. I thought all the quarterbacks, honestly, looked pretty good once it got down there in tight. It was either defense is going to make a play or offense is going to score a touchdown because you're running those in-goal situations. And the quarterbacks, they were threading needles. They were throwing dimes to the corner. They were throwing great slant routes over the middle or crossing routes to the outside. I thought all the quarterbacks fared pretty well today.
Anything personnel groupings wise, any formational kind of stuff you'd want to touch on, Tyler?
When you talk about personnel, the first thing that came to mind was Josh Lugg got a little banged up today, and he had to be replaced by Michael Carmody at right tackle. That's something to monitor. Brian Kelly said it was his neck. I know he's dealt with those back issues in the past. Anything with the spine obviously isn't great. He did leave practice for a little while, came back fully padded. He just never went back in to get reps. So that's something to monitor there. Defensively, I thought it was just crazy. We've talked about these hockey line changes, even with the offense. Some of these receivers, after a big play, can come right out, and a full set of receivers can come right back in. I saw the same thing with the defense today, particularly with the front seven. Maybe they get a couple stops, and now you're facing a third and medium type situation. It looked like Notre Dame had a completely different personnel grouping to send out there for those situations. 6 or 7 guys would come off, 6 or 7 new guys would come on. And it got to the point where, you're trying to take down numbers. Who are the guys coming off? Who are the guys coming on? I mean, basically at that point, it's, first teamers off, second teamers on. So really interesting to see. And that goes right to what Brian Kelly has said, in that up front, especially, there are a lot of different guys who can play a lot of different positions. When it comes down to it, those guys are just going to have to make plays and stopping the football. And I think Brian Kelly is really confident that that's what they're going to do.
Who won the day, Tyler, and why? Offense or defense?
I talked, really highly about those quarterbacks. I would say the offense won the day. And look, in 7-on-7, it kind of lends itself more to the offense. Obviously, it's a little harder for those defensive backs and linebackers to kind of line up one-on-one, especially with the athletes that Notre Dame has. We've talked a lot about if these guys can just stay healthy, they're going to be phenomenal. I thought the same thing today. Kevin Austin, it looks like anytime the ball goes his way, if the quarterback makes a mistake, it's going to be on the quarterback. But if it's a catchable ball, that guy is catching the ball. Lorenzo Styles looks great in the slot. I think he's a guy that's going to kind of work his way up the depth chart and maybe push Avery Davis for some playing time. I mean, just across the board offensively, they look great. Even in, I saw Notre Dame work a lot on screen passes in individual drills today. And then when it got to the scrimmage, they executed those very well. There were plenty of screen plays to Chris Tyree, Kyron Williams, even Logan Diggs, the freshman running back, that went for 5, 6, 7 yards. So when you're popping 5, 6, 7 yards on a screenplay, and then you can hit, Braden Lenzy going down the sideline, like what happened a couple times today, and the offense definitely won the day.
The Notre Dame football team is off for the next couple of days. The next practice will be on Sunday. The next practice that the media will get to see is Tuesday, August 24th, with the first 30 minutes being available to the media. Check right here at blueandgold.com and our YouTube page for all coverage of the rest of fall camp as the Notre Dame Fighting Irish prepare for Florida State on the road on September 5th.